This is the Sons of UCF podcast, your place for UCF sports talk year-round. Now, here is Adam and Mike.
Greetings, Night Nation. You have found the 125th edition of the Sons of UCF podcast. My name is Adam, and as always, my good friend and yours, Mr. UCF Mike, is with me for yet another week. Greetings, Mike. How are you?
Doing great, man. Seeing that we're finally getting some recognition. We're turning famous now. We made it into the Pegasus magazine. Have we officially arrived now after 125 episodes?
Maybe. I mean, first of all, they congratulated us on our 100th episode, so a little behind, but don't worry, they have 25 to catch up on, and they're all 25 great episodes. And the fact that neither one of us realized we were in the magazine initially until someone told us probably says we're not as famous as we think we are, but certainly was an awesome thing to see. So if you get to the Pegasus Alumni Magazine, Mike and I are listed there under the 2002 class, and very grateful to be mentioned there. That was awesome.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's coming up on 20 years now. 2002. We're in 2021. Next year, do we have to do something special for the 20-year anniversary? Do they even do reunions and stuff like that for college? I don't know.
That's a great question. These are all questions I don't have answers to, but maybe I will find them during the course of the show, which, hey, by the way, you should be glad that you tuned into, because we have an action-packed show for you this evening. As always, we'll have Cal of the Week coming up in a few minutes. We have an update on the greatest plays in UCF history brackets. If you're not following UCF Mike on Twitter at UCF Mike1, or if you're not in the dungeon, Mike has painstakingly gone through a 64-play bracket, and I think he's broken down most of the first round here. So we'll get to those results in a little bit, but it's been a ton of fun to relive some of those plays. We're getting a lot of people who are commenting and enjoying the trip down memory lane. So we'll update everyone on the brackets, where we are, and maybe preview some upcoming matchups. And then we have headlines as well. We'll get you caught up on what's going on UCF. And then don't miss our interview with Sha'reff Rashad, one of the most consistent, Mike, one of the best guys at UCF, a 4-year guy, really a 5-year guy. Was a part of a lot of great teams. He was fantastic. He told some great stories, some really good perspective on football then, football now, and his experience at UCF and his experience since he's been an alum for the football program. So a lot of great stuff. And if all that doesn't warrant us a 5-star rating out of you people, then I don't know what else we can do around here. Seriously.
I'm done begging for the ratings, but I'm not going to need to after this week, because Sha'reff Rashad really came strong with the interview. And I always was a big fan of his. I wonder if it's just because he had such a unique name, but it seemed like Eric Kohler was always crediting him with a tackle or an interception at the stadium. So his name always stuck in my head after a game.
He's just one of those players. When I was watching his highlights after, we knew we were going to have him on, you forget about all like the little things he did. And you look at his stats and, 100 tackles in one season and 14 interceptions in his career. And you think back like how important he was to UCF and how consistent he was, and just how much of a sort of a dynamic player he was. So it was great to catch up with him. You guys aren't going to want to miss that, Mike. But make sure, let's do this stuff off the top. Here's some housekeeping. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels. That's at Sons of UCF. So search that everywhere: Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Again, Mike is on Twitter at UCF Mike1. Make sure you follow the YouTube page, because you'll have exclusive videos that we post there. Sometimes our good buddy Trace Troco is able to get some exclusive conversations. Those are posted there as well. You can also find the Sons of UCF live shows there. So that's a Thursday evening, internet-only broadcast, 8 p.m., wherever you get your social media stuff, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. So check us out there. We'll be back live this Thursday, and we'll break down a bunch of stuff, Mike, including we have spring practice. And Gus Malzahn and the crew there did something a little bit unique, Mike, this past Saturday. An open practice. They opened the stands, opened the gates, and said, everybody come on in. And even though the weather wasn't great, looks like they had a pretty decent crowd, Mike, but some open practice stuff. So we finally got some news and notes. Some people were able to see some stuff and take some notes and make some mental observations, Mike. So let's start right there off the top. What did you learn? Anything you read, anything you saw about the open practice that was interesting, surprising, or good to see from your perspective?
Well, it was cool that even happened. And we haven't seen something like that since O'Leary was here. So it's cool that Malzahn wants to connect with the fans and, like he said, kind of give them ownership in the program again. And being able to go out to watch practice, that's very cool. Not every school gives you that opportunity. So I hope people are able to take advantage of that. I know a bunch of our guys like cost seg advisor out there taking notes and producing some videos for us. So it was very cool, man. I enjoyed watching some of that stuff. And, there's only so much you can tell from watching a clip here and there for me. But if you get a chance to go out there, and if you live in the Orlando area, I don't see why you wouldn't. The only reason I wouldn't go to that because it's 3 hours away. But if I'm up there on a Saturday morning, I'd love to go to a practice.
Yeah, again, a lot of people were taking some notes and just talking through what they saw. And obviously, you don't know what UCF was going to show. Were they going to show everything, or they just kind of run through the motions? Obviously, they were sort of running a regular practice, so it's maybe wasn't everything they had on display. Something that everyone should note, though, is that the transfers, so all the transfers that essentially have come under the Gus Malzahn regime, if you will. None of those guys are practicing. None of those guys are eligible to play just yet. So those guys were not part of it. So if you're looking for Big Cat, or you're looking for Mark Anthony Richards or any of those guys, they were not available, Mike. But I think the biggest thing, the name that I read the most from those who were there, and even Gus Malzahn was asked about it afterwards, was a transfer who did get there early enough, actually came under the Heupel regime, and that's Brandon Johnson, Mike. He's the Tennessee transfer. His name popped up a lot, and a lot of folks were saying he was really consistent, made a lot of good catches. Didn't look like the fastest or the sort of the speediest guy, but I saw a lot of positive things about Brandon Johnson from the Saturday practice.
Well, that's a good thing. Like we've been saying for the last couple of weeks now with this staff, they have no preconceived notions about who was already here last year. So this guy's coming in, and he has a chance right away to make an impression. And it looks like that's what he did on this first week of practice. So, I mean, every week there may be somebody new. And that was the name that popped up this week. And maybe for week 2, you're going to find somebody else that maybe you didn't expect to start making a big impression on everybody.
And spring ball is kind of that place, Mike, where, every now and again a name leaks out that we hadn't heard. I mean, I can remember vividly 2018, we kept hearing about this kid named Greg McCrae, who we'd seen a little bit on the field in 2017. But he was quote unquote the breakout of spring camp, and obviously you saw what that led to. So it's not impossible to kind of see where a guy maybe takes some strides in spring. But it was good at least to see the team out there. We saw some throws from Dylan Gabriel, some of the receivers. We saw the guys who were maybe targeted first. Mike, the running back spot obviously is something that is very much up for debate, right? Who RB1 will end up being. Looks like Bentavious Thompson got a lot of those carries early on. But cost seg advisor chiming in saying that R.J. Harvey looks like he was a big part of that group as well. He was the transfer from Virginia last year. So it certainly would be interesting to see. And as these practices go on, and it sounds like every Saturday, best I can tell from the schedule, that they'll have these open practices. So we may be able to kind of see week from week to week how some of this stuff changes. Obviously, with the first week kind of being more of an install week and more of a getting to know you week. As time goes on, Malzahn even said specifically week 1 is kind of acclimation. It's kind of more about guys just getting out there. And week 2 is when they start to really sort of figure out, maybe from a depth chart standpoint, who's going to get more reps and who's going to be with what group. So I'll be curious to see how these things evolve as we get to weeks 2 and week 3.
All right. I was listening to Coach T. Will today, and he's saying week 2 is the week where you really find out who loves football. The first week, it's easy for everybody to get out there. Everybody's excited. It's new. Everybody's pumped up. But the second week, now that things have settled in, and you're really going to find out who wants to be there every day and who wants to put in that effort every day. So this week is a huge week for all the kids at practice.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't like that I saw a few different places, Mike, from a bunch of the people who were there was you were reading a lot about a lot of drops from the receiving corps, which obviously was a bit of a challenge last year. So hopefully that's something that just kind of gets cleaned up as they get more used to playing with each other in a new system. Some of these guys maybe didn't get a lot of reps last year, but I was reading about some drops, Mike, and hopefully we get that out of our system early.
Right. And maybe some of that is nerves, like we just said, trying to make an impression, maybe trying to do a little too much, maybe turning their head upfield before they need to, and just not focusing on the ball. So maybe that's all it was. Maybe that gets settled down now that they've had another week.
Another name that I saw pop up a bunch was Devad Wilson. His name kind of kept coming up. People were talking about him kind of being a leader back there, really being a vocal guy, running around, flying around, making plays. Obviously, with a young secondary, Mike, it'll be interesting to see who's able to come out and sort of make their name or kind of stake their claim as the leader. Losing a guy like Richie Gray and Aaron Robinson, two guys who were kind of stalwarts back there. There's kind of a void, if you will, from a leadership standpoint and from sort of that main guy from the defensive backfield. So curious to see if that ends up being Devad Wilson, but his name surfaced a bunch through some of the comments I was reading.
Well, the talent we know for sure is there. He was highly recruited coming out of high school. I believe he was a 4-star he went to Georgia. When he came over, we saw flashes. He didn't get to play until late in the year. But when he did get in there, you heard his name a couple of times per game. So he looks like he may be the guy that takes that next step. He may be the leader in the secondary this next year.
Well, again, overall, it sounds like it was a pretty positive experience. I mean, again, you can always nitpick a practice and nitpick that apart. Afterwards, I thought the most interesting thing that's been said a few times, Mike, and I don't know how to take it. I guess it makes some sense, but Malzahn made a point of saying it as his press conference after the practice on Saturday. And you mentioned T. Will. He mentioned it today during his press availability that a lot of these guys weren't in shape. And that sort of that month off in between sort of the Heupel staff leaving and all those guys leaving and Malzahn and Dawson and the new strength staff getting in, that these guys really weren't working out very hard. I found it interesting. What do you make of him, consistently kind of saying, hey, we got to get our guys in shape?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with how they were training last year, too. We just spoke to Brendan Hayes, and he talked about the difference of the training from the Frost staff to the Heupel staff. Maybe that Heupel training staff, I mean, they train guys a certain way, but they trained everybody to work quickly and probably a lot more conditioning and not enough strength. And maybe that's the same thing that Malzahn's staff is seeing here. Maybe these guys are not up to speed on the strength so far in the first week or two. And I mean, when you don't have a coach there for a few weeks, that probably made a big difference too. So when everybody left and we were kind of in flux for a couple of weeks, maybe that had an impact on the kids. But now we have one of the best trainers in college football on our side. So hopefully that can get squared away.
Yeah, not that I expect these guys to say anything different, but the love fest has continued really for Malzahn and for the staff. I mean, Bethune and Sam Jackson were at the mic today for open media, and they both were talking lovingly about the staff and how much fun it's been. They talked about Coach Dawson and how much he's brought Mike. So at least the love fest continues, which again, would you expect these guys to say anything different? But so far in terms of the transition, it all seems to be going pretty well. I mean, obviously we don't know what's happening behind the scenes yet. And, we'll wait and see what happens after depth charts are released and maybe people lose spots they thought they had. Maybe that'll cause some ruffles here and there. But so far the love fest continues. Everyone seems to really be on the Gus bus and the T-Will train and whatever other words you want to put together that maybe have the alliteration there.
Right. And also what Gus is doing may just be trying to inspire the guys, try to get them a little more into it too. I mean, he may say that they're out of shape just so that they'll come in the next day and work a little harder. He knows that the kids will hear that and maybe it gets in some of their heads.
Did you see T-Will on that scooter, by the way, with strolling with Sammy? He was on the scooter. He was in the car. Did you see the energy from T-Will? I mean, I feel whatever that guy's got, if he could just bottle it and I could take like a shot of it a day, I feel like I would just dominate the world.
Yeah, I don't know if you could handle that.
I don't think I could. I mean,
no.
Yeah, they're talking about vaccines. I need some of whatever T-Will has because he seems like he just gets up and is ready to, bench press a Ford Bronco. I mean, he just seems like he's ready to go.
Yeah, he's a walking B12 shot, that guy. But that's great. It's great for the players, too, because they seem to love it and they seem to feed off it so far. So, and guys like that are authentic. You can't fake that, right? Anybody can come in and try to act like that for a day, but after a while, that's either who you are or it's not. And it seems to be who this guy is. So I think that's a great thing for the players to see.
Yeah, again, so far everything's kind of lovingly looking positive, right? We head into week 2 of the spring practices. Again, UCF keeping the same schedule: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. With Saturday allegedly sort of an open practice. I know media was able to take some pictures today, Monday. A little bit of a rainy day. The guys were still outside. I don't think they're eligible to be there on Wednesday. But we may see some stuff on Friday and Saturday. It sounds like, from what Malzahn said, Mike, not a ton of install took place. I mean, some of the basic stuff. And so maybe that's more the focus this week and kind of figuring out the depth chart. But, things are moving along. We're still we're really just a handful of weeks away now from the spring game. and then kind of the break after that, and we'll see sort of what transpires. But all in all, as you sit here, sort of 2 weeks into the official Gus Malzahn era, do you have any concerns, or is there anything that's bothering UCF, Mike, about where we are right now as a football program?
No, I feel great about where we are. I think we're better off today than we were when we walked out of that stadium in Boca a couple months ago. I think the trajectory is pointed in the right direction. I think we got the guy here that can take this program to the next level in Gus Malzahn, and I think he's ready to do it. So I'm very excited about where UCF football is headed.
And then a quick update. We talked last week, Mike. You asked me if Kansas had an athletic director yet. Doesn't seem like they do yet, but it seems like Mohajer is his name has not really been brought up anymore. So any instability that may have been worried about at that point seems to be squashed. So hopefully we have our power structure on the football and the AD side moving forward. I think that'll be huge for obviously for the program. Let's talk hoops for just a quick second, Mike. We were talking Monday night, Monday afternoon. The women's hoops team was in San Antonio for a first round matchup against the Northwestern Wildcats, and a hard fought game, Mike. A tough game. But unfortunately, UCF ends up on the wrong side of the scoreboard, and they lose their first-round matchup to Northwestern. So their 2020-2021 season has come to an end.
Yeah, a little disappointing. It was a very good year for the girls, a very respectable record, and got to the dance, which is not something we've done too many times. We're still searching for that first win, and we know how long it took the men to finally get one done. So hopefully we're building towards the right thing, and hopefully Coach Abe is here to stay. That's the one thing that I'm concerned about with all the success that we've had with the basketball program. Is somebody's going to come try to take her away, and most likely Tennessee, because we know Danny White's relationship with her. But hopefully she can stay here and keep building this thing and keep improving the program, and next year we'll be back in the dance and get that first one.
62-51 was the final, Mike. Probably the most concerning thing besides the loss was sort of UCF's star player Diamond Battles goes down with a right knee injury. Looked pretty serious. She did not re-enter the game. She was on the bench, sort of propped up with a brace on it. So you hate to speculate on what that might look like, but if you've watched a lot of football, you've seen a lot of, or basketball, you've seen a lot of similar injuries. So hopefully all turns out well. But it's a tough way to end the season, not only with a loss, but now with your best player potentially facing a long injury road ahead. Certainly added a little bit of salt to the wound on that one.
Yeah, you never want to see something like that. These kids work so hard all year round. It's not just during basketball season. They were all year training, and then of course going to school and being a student athlete at the same time. They put so much effort into it, and then to have an injury like that, it's really hard to see. But she's going to battle her way through it.
Yeah, all in all, though, a great season for the women's team. Obviously, the Cows posed a bit of a challenge this year and was a hurdle we weren't able to sort of cross from a conference championship standpoint. But obviously, we saw the potential the team has. We saw what the conference looks like now with UConn not in the picture, and so it certainly bodes well to be wide open. And we'll see how Coach Abe can continue to build on the success they've had. Are they able to sort of keep that trajectory going forward? What does that look like, to your point, Mike, from a coaching standpoint? But certainly you got to feel good about it, if you're a UCF fan. I mean, you probably feel better. I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll talk about this next, but do you feel better about the women's program or the men's program, basketball-wise?
Well, coming off this season, I think it's hard to say anything but the women. We talked about the last couple of weeks. I kind of found this men's season to be a little disappointing this year, especially after the hot start we got off to. So it seems like the women, and you just mentioned it too, with UConn being out of this conference, we are right there. We're at the top of this conference. We were the number 2 team this year, and we have a chance to be the number 1 in the next year or two. With basketball, we're more towards the middle. With the men's, we're more towards the middle of the pack and fighting our way to the top. That's where we want to be, in that top 3 with Houston and Memphis and Wichita. We're not quite there yet. So I have to say I feel better about the women right now, today. But I do believe just today, right? Did we sign a 4-star recruit for basketball?
We sure did, Mike. I'm glad you segued that. So over the weekend, Taylor and Tyler Hendricks, who are fraternal twins out of Calvary Christian down there in your neck of the woods, Mike, in Fort Lauderdale, have their class of 2022 guys. They have both verbally committed to UCF. Now, Taylor is a 6'8", 195-pound power forward. He is a four-star commit. He's the 82nd ranked player nationally. Tyler is 6'5", 170, more of a guard. He does not yet have any stars next to his name, so I don't know what his rating would be. But obviously the big get here is a four-star guy in Taylor Hendricks. That makes two back-to-back recruiting cycles, Mike, that Johnny has reeled in a four-star player. So we'll see what that means. Obviously, we have to get this guy to the court still. We still got a long way to go before he's wearing black and gold. But he commits early to come to UCF, and that's obviously maybe a big sign for the future. I know we talked about Johnny on our live show and whether or not he was kind of going to be in it for the long haul and do we need to make a change. You got to give him credit, Mike. He's found some young talent. He got Isaiah Adams. He got Jamil Reynolds. Again, the four-star guys coming in 21 and 22 right now. You can't ask for much more from a recruiting perspective.
Are these the Graham brothers all over again? Is that what we're saying? One guy with a lot of talent and the other guy, maybe that's why we got the big guy, is because we agreed to take his brother. Something like how the Shaquem and Shaquille Griffin ended up at UCF, and it turned out that the guy that you brought along for the ride, the second brother Shaquem, turned out to be a Hall of Famer. So who knows what we can get out of the second brother here? But great news. The recruiting has picked up, and it has for the last couple of years. But now, what you have to do with that is win ball games. So we're getting the guys on campus. We're getting them here. We're getting Mr. Florida basketball to come to UCF. Now we have to do something with it, and now we got to start being serious contenders in this conference and making an appearance in the dance more than once every 10 years.
And obviously UCF, fought off some big-time programs who are after at least Taylor Hendricks, the four-star recruit. So held off some big-time programs. And, it's certainly, we give Johnny a bunch of crap every now and again. But, again, you got to consider you also brought in C.J. Walker, who was a transfer, right? I mean, as much as, that's not necessarily a traditional recruit. He had to obviously recruit him, to come to UCF. So, he's brought in the star talents, if you will. And I mean star from a rating perspective. Now it's time to see if we can put it all together on the court. Obviously, we had a bunch of things happen this year. I think we were playing really good ball down the stretch, Mike. But so Johnny lands a big fish, and maybe we'll see what his brother pans out to be. His brother seems to be more of a shooter, where Taylor seems to be more of an inside sort of post player. So you never know. Those shooters get hot if you're watching the tournament as it's going on right now, Mike. Shoot or shoot. And you see somebody like a Buddy Boeheim all of a sudden change a game for a program like Syracuse. If Taylor and Tyler can do anything like that, UCF's in a good spot.
Yep, and it only takes one or two guys to come in and change the whole trajectory of your basketball program. We've said that before. We seem to have a couple guys here now with Adams and Reynolds and Darren Green, guys that look like they have superstar potential. And now we add one or two more of those guys, and hopefully this team takes the turn that we need it to.
All right, let's go to the Diamond, Mike. The baseball team has turned it around a little bit. They had obviously a tough sweep at home at the hands of Liberty, and they've bounced back. They won 3 out of 4 against North Florida, and they took 3 out of 4 against Jacksonville. Excuse me. So they've at least kind of made a bit of a rebound. Now 9-10 overall, and so the sky is not yet falling, Mike, and you said this in the live show. We have not yet even started our conference season. We have Florida State in a midweek game coming up here this week, and then we have Troy that we'll be heading to before we, and then Jacksonville for one random game, and then we get into the meat of the schedule for the conference beginning April 1st, Mike. So 9-10 now for your baseball nights. Where are you at with their performance? I mean, 10-0 shutout on Sunday is a good way to put a W on the board.
Playing a lot better. And you forgot to mention even a win against FAU last week. And FAU is a solid team. We evened up the season series with them 2 apiece. So I like the way the guys are playing now. We got guys busting out of slumps like Pablo Ruiz did this weekend. That's a great sign now. And I said last week, if we can get back to 500 before we start conference play, then we'd be in a good spot. We're only a game under right now with, I believe, 5 to go. So if we go 3-2 in that stretch, I think we'll be okay. and then we start the conference play and go from there. And we start off with the Cows, which is a good matchup for us to start this way. You know, the way the team's playing a lot better now, maybe we can beat the Cows up for a couple of games.
Yeah, first 7 on the road, three in Tampa, and then 4 against the Bearcats before we head home for a 4-game tilt. So definitely still some time for the baseball team to turn it around. I know it was a bit of a rocky start, Mike, but they definitely have some time to turn that around too. A couple of news notes and nuggets that are kind of flowing around out there. Terry Mohajir sent a note out to sort of talk through the spring game and what to be expected and all that stuff, Mike. And he made mention that they're planning on a 100% capacity for the bounce house this year. Obviously, a lot of things need to take place from a public health and safety standpoint, Mike, but they're sort of talking and leaning towards trying to get 100% capacity back at the bounce house, which obviously will be good for a few different reasons if we can do it safely. But that certainly is something to look forward to, is, you know, kind of back to quote unquote normal game day experiences coming up in the near future.
That's the plan right now. That hopefully will happen. Get everybody back in there. I heard rumors today that it may be coming out soon that the opener against Boise State is going to be a Thursday night, which I don't like. I prefer a Friday personally, but either way, that'd be nice. I'll just have to take Friday off and maybe leave work a little early or something on Thursday to make it up for the game. But exciting to think that I'll even be able to do that. Whereas last year, I didn't even give a thought of going to any games because of COVID and all that. So now that there's a possibility, we're still how many months out? Like another 6 months to go, 7 months to go.
Yep.
6 months. So, I mean, it's getting closer, man, and that's good news. I know the spring game we're only allowed 25%, and it's a noon game, so that's kind of hard to get excited about. But when things really kick off for real in September, hopefully we'll all be in our regular seats for that one.
You said kick off. Something else I saw that has been floating around the interwebs this weekend on social media. It appears, Mike, that UCF has offered a transfer kicker by the name of Christian Zendejas from Arizona State. You don't think he's accepted or anything yet? Looks like he has 2 years of eligibility left. He was a Lou Garoza semifinalist. He was a bowl game MVP. I'm not sure what that means. But what do you make of maybe, and I don't know if obviously Gus must have interest if we allegedly offered this guy, Mike, the kicking game maybe getting a boost if we're able to pick up a kicking transfer, which seems kind of out of the ordinary, but hey, we'll take it, right?
Yeah, we'll definitely take it. And we've talked about special teams on here many times ad nauseum, really. And the kicking game has been a big part of that. We saw we lost the game against Memphis on a field goal. We've talked about the kicking out of balance for the last couple of years. The kicking game can use an improvement, and competition is always good. If this kid is willing to come here, he seems like he is a good kicker. And you just mentioned he was MVP of the bowl game. That tells me he probably hit a couple big-time field goals, maybe even a game winner. I don't even know who they played in their bowl or if they won, but it sounds like they did, and he had a big part of it. So anybody to come in here and push Obarski or even get Obarski out of here, that'd be a good sign.
Wow. I mean, the Obarski hate is strong, huh? Yeah, I mean, again, yeah, I think pushing is important. Listen, it's no secret that the kicking game was a tad unreliable last year. I think there were moments of time when we trotted out the kicker that we were all kind of collectively holding our breath. So a veteran guy who, you know, appears to have a pretty strong leg and appears to be pretty accurate. He's got experience, obviously, kicking in some relative big games in the Pac-12. You know, maybe that helps us out too. So Gus is certainly staying active in the portal, Mike. I mean, he mentioned it during his press conference, and that, you know, he obviously can't speak directly about it, but, you know, he doesn't see any reason why kids won't want to come to play here in Orlando and UCF. And so far, he's been true to his word, Mike. He's definitely out there, you know, finding guys and making offers. You know, we've had a few commits so far, but obviously the 2022 class is still kind of coming together. But it'd be interesting to see how much. I guess how much interest there is for other guys as after spring ball kind of breaks free. I think that's when you'll see some additional movement for some guys. You know, will Gus continue to stay active at that point? We'll see.
Well, it says a lot that after a couple practices, he went straight to the portal and trying to get somebody in to kick this year. Not talking about a recruit for the next year after that. So I think he's seen what he I mean, he's probably seen enough after a couple practices, and he wants to get somebody maybe with some more experience and some more accuracy.
Well, I thought I'd read someplace, and I should probably look this up, but I don't have time. I thought I read someplace that Obarski was hurt and he wasn't kicking. I don't know if he was out for a practice or if he's been out since. I don't know if we should probably confirm that, but especially if we have some issues at depth, if Obarski's hurt, and who knows what the injury is, maybe bringing in some size and some depth doesn't hurt anybody, right? And it never hurts to have too many guys walking around the campus who can put it between the uprights.
No, and I mean, who knows if we have some kind of former soccer stuff? Maybe we should have an open competition, an open practice or tryout for kids on campus. I'm sure there's somebody on there that can kick a field goal. I mean, we got 70,000 students, whatever it is. You tell me not one of them was a big-time soccer player in high school? Maybe you can convert into a field goal kicker?
I don't know.
That happens all the time, right?
Well, I don't know, but we got a kid who plays for Ohio. They just got bounced tonight, but apparently he was just a regular student at UCF, and now he's a starting point guard, and he's an NBA prospect. So he was just sitting in econ class, and all of a sudden now he's starting in March Madness for the Ohio Bobcats. So I guess anything's possible, right? If Jason Preston can make it to the league from econ 101 at UCF, I guess anything's possible.
That's what I'm talking about. Our campus is so huge. We have so many kids. There's probably so many talented kids out there that got passed over and didn't want to go kick for a smaller school and said, let me just go to UCF for the education. Maybe they're out there and they've been overlooked, and maybe there's a kicker somewhere walking around campus.
There's probably a kicker walking around somewhere, and if they are, walk your way onto the field because, again, competition certainly will not hurt, Mike. That's a quick little run around the sort of the news and notes. Not much too terribly newsworthy happening right around these times. Obviously, the basketball season is both now coming to an end. Football, spring practice kind of just getting kicked off, no pun intended. Baseball in full swing. So we got a few things going on, but pretty quiet week from that perspective. But what has not been quiet, Mike, is March Madness, both on the field, or the court, I guess, and in the brackets on the internets. And UCF Mike has done yeoman's work here on this, and we'll explain more about that coming up right after this. Don't go anywhere. We are the Sons of UCF.
Mike and Adam, Sons of UCF. That'll move those chains. That's good enough for another UCF first down.
All right, before we start this segment, I think each and every one of you out there needs to stop and just give UCF Mike a very big thank you. Go ahead, everybody. I'll give you a minute. Okay, because Mike went through 64 plays in UCF history, put them all in a bracket, ranked them, rated them, and he is painstakingly stuck with sending out Twitter polls and dungeon message board polls for each of the different matchups. And there's a lot that's going into that. He's keeping track of the tallies. He's trying to figure out the scores and the results. He's losing his mind when it's not going his way. But we are officially, I think now, Mike, through round one. Do I have that right? I'm looking at your sheet here. I think we're either through round one or all the round one polls have been released. Is that right?
We are very close. I have 2 matchups that have not been released. I haven't had time to cut up the videos for those 2. I plan on doing them maybe by tomorrow morning, so all of round 1 will be done. But there are 2 matchups that have not been released yet. They are the 4 seed versus 13 Joe Burnett punt return touchdown against Tulsa, against Marlon Williams running over some Bearcats. And the other 4-13 matchup, which is Bobby Joe playing his first touchdown in school history against Bam Moore's interception against LSU. Those are the last 2 to be released. They'll be released in the next couple hours, and then we'll be done with round 1.
Well, let's go through some of the results so far. We won't go through all these. We'll touch on some of the maybe the upsets. So this is the Mike Hughes bracket, Mike. He's the number 1 seed, probably number 1 seed overall in the tournament. Really, that bracket, no surprise, no real upset. I guess the only upset really by statistical measures would be the 10-7 Blake Bortles rushing TD against Baylor beat out the Jordan Ozerites INT to beat the Cows in 2013. Everything else in that bracket remained chalk, including what I consider the upset of a century, because I buried this guy. I buried him. I apologize to his family. I almost sent them like chocolates and flowers and candies and stuff. But Franco Grilla and his game-winning kick against Youngstown State in 1990 by virtue of a heavy push in the dungeon, I think it is, took out the Shaquem Griffin INT against Temple in 2017. Like, I did not have that one. You knew that was my big upset. I was surprised at that result.
Yep, and in a couple of cases, the dungeon has had to come in and straighten out the Twitter folks. Twitter seems to be leaning a lot more towards the recent plays, where in the dungeon you get a lot of the older fans that maybe can appreciate the history a little more, and that's kind of what happened here. It happened in this case, and it happened a couple other times we may talk about. But good to see Franco Grilla get through the first round. He's going to have a tough matchup now in the next round. He's going to go up against Latavius Murray's touchdown against Georgia in the Liberty Bowl, the first ever bowl win. I don't know if he makes it through this one.
Yeah, there's some tough round 2 matchups. In that Mike Hughes bracket, Hughes is now going to face KZ flipping into the end zone against Memphis. Again, I think Hughes is safe there, but I'm curious to see what kind of result the KZ can maybe put up on that one. But I feel like he's probably pretty safe in that round. Let's go to the Bortles to Godfrey bracket, Mike. That's the number 1 overall seed, the 2013 touchdown pass and catch against Louisville. A couple of upsets in this bracket here. You've got the 9 seed Otis Anderson screen pass against the Cows, took out Storm Johnson's TD run against Penn State. You have another 10-7 upset here. Storm Johnson regroups and wins the 10-7 matchup. His TD run against Louisville squeaks out Rennell Hall's second TD versus Baylor. And then, Mike, in what is an asterisk team in this tournament because of a lot of people calling you out on some inconsistencies here. You have Darryl Mack's, all 6 of Darryl Mack's touchdowns against the Bortles to Perryman touchdown against the Cows in 2013. Darryl Mack's 6 touchdowns as the 11 seed takes out the 6 seed Bortles and Perryman. Other than that, everything else went chalk. I know the only matchup you were concerned about was the Hinshaw helmet touchdown against Alabama in 2000. That was going up against penalties to start the game against Cincinnati in 2018. That one got a little heated, Mike. Luckily, Hinshaw prevailed because I know you were ready to pull the plug on this one.
I almost canceled the entire tournament, and I was very serious about it too. Saturday evening, I'm watching the results come back in for that, and it was a dead tie, basically. I think the penalties were winning at one point. We're talking. Look, I love the game day game. I was there. I was part of the crowd. If you remember, actually going back the week before that game, when we talked about that, we previewed that game on this very show. I said we should kick off first, give them the ball because the crowd is going to be so amped up. We're going to get in Cincinnati's head and play a big factor in the game. It's exactly how it happened. They got the ball first, and we saw what happened with penalties. But let's face it, man, the penalties had nothing to do with that game. Cincinnati still got the first down. They moved the ball like another 30 yards. They pinned us deep, and they ended up sacking McKenzie. He fumbles in the end zone. They took a 7-0 lead. So causing that false start really meant nothing in that game. We went on to win big. But the Hinshaw touchdown was a huge part of the Alabama game. We're down 2 touchdowns with about under 2 minutes to go in the half, and we go on a 98-yard drive. And it's capped off by that touchdown. And it's one of the coolest plays you'll see with Hinshaw's helmet popping off, the Alabama defender taking it and flinging it across the field. Just one of the coolest plays in UCF history. And I couldn't believe that it was even that close. All the other 2 seeds went on easy romps, and this one should have been the same. And it almost ended up losing. It almost cost you guys the rest of this tournament because I was going to shut the whole thing down.
Yeah, don't tempt UCF Mike. He's he's a man of his word. I think the second round matchups, Mike, will be interesting here. You've got the 4-5, which is Richie Grant's forced fumble against Wilcox in 2017 from the Cows versus 24K Kevin Smith's first touchdown in bounce house history versus Texas. I think that'll be an interesting 4-5 matchup. And your boy Hinshaw, he's got a tough one too. He's got the Storm Johnson TD run against Louisville, the 10 seed. So are we going to be okay if the 10 seed beats the 2 seed here? Is this one going to be okay if Hinshaw doesn't win this matchup?
I mean, I'll let it go.
Okay.
The Louisville game was okay. The Alabama game was our biggest win for a long time, probably up until that night in Louisville. So I can see the Storm Johnson thing, giving him a run for his money. That was a huge play in that comeback. Remember, we're down 21 points in that game, and the Storm Johnson touchdown really started to spark that comeback that night. So if Hinshaw almost lost to a false start penalty, I can see him losing to the Storm Johnson touchdown. I'm not going to make a big deal about it, but the biggest upset so far in the whole tournament was the DJ Mack one, the 11th seed. He's the highest seed to advance so far, and that's in this bracket. 6 touchdowns. I know it's not one play, but I had to get a couple of those in there. There's a few. So I had to get the Becton 4 touchdowns 4 different ways somewhere in the bracket. And once I did that, I had to put the DJ Mack thing in there, and also have Quincy McDuffie returning 2 touchdowns. So there's a few of those I had to throw in. I know it's not single play, but I didn't want to rename the whole tournament to UCF Moments, so I just kept it named as UCF Greatest Plays.
That's how we roll around here. Let's move on to the Shaquan Burkett Pick 6 bracket. That matchup still ongoing against Dante and Sire Burley, Mike. Again, another 10-7 upset in this bracket. KZ's touchdown run against Auburn took off the 7 seed, which was the goalpost coming down against Marshall. So that was an interesting one. One of the ones that I found really interesting that the matchup here and how it was favored, the 6 seed, Davin Bush's Pick 6 against Alabama, actually beat out the Daryl Mack to Otis Anderson Peace Out TD in 2018 in the AAC championship game. I thought maybe they would. I thought Mack and Otis had a shot at that one because the Davin interception was such a long time ago, and if Hinshaw was struggling to win, I was surprised that Bush pulled that out, Mike. But he wins that 6-11 matchup, which is interesting. You mentioned there's a matchup still that's to be released. That's the 4 seed Bobby Joe Plain's first TD in school history in 1979. Versus the Bam Moore Pick 6 versus LSU, and Joey Connors baptizing Joe Burrow. I feel like I can tell you on this one, Bam and Joey are gonna run over Bobby Joe, but I guess I was wrong about Grilla. So what do I know? But that's the latest on the Shaquan Burkett bracket.
That would be the biggest upset to this point if that does happen, seed wise, the number 13. And the reason it's ranked that low is because it came in a loss. Every one of the 16 seeds came in a loss, so plays got penalized for that. There was a play, it's in the other bracket, the Greco to Rocky Ross touchdown. That play could have gone as high as like a 2 seed if we win that game, but it's in a loss. So that had a lot of effect on the seeding. But that one has a chance. The 13 seed may advance. We're going to release that one tonight or tomorrow morning, and we'll see how it does. But the winner of that game's got a very tough matchup with the Rennell Hall first touchdown against Baylor in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, second round matchups to look out for. Curious, I think Stanback, who's the 3 seed right now, he's going against Mac to Gabe Davis. I know those results aren't released yet, but I think that's probably the toughest matchup. You'll have Hale Perryman versus the KZ TD run. I think Hale Perryman is one of those plays that's iconic in UCF history. It's a game-winning play. Not that KZ's run wasn't important, but I feel like this bracket here will probably end up continuing to go chalk, with the exception of Bobby Joe Plain getting knocked out.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. The Shaquan Burkett. You know what I found interesting so far? The 1 seeds, which I think are clear, none of them have gotten 100% yet. So there's some people that are either just out there trolling, or I don't know what their deal is with some of these votes. There's no way that some of these should even be close votes.
And then moving to the Javier Borlegui bracket, the 1 seed there. He is currently going up against AK's TD run against Michigan. Upset so far in that bracket, Mike, the 9 seed Joe Burnett, his interception against Rice for the title in 2005, edged out the blocked field goal again in that Cincinnati game day game of 2018. Everything else is gone to chalk thus far. I know the 7-10 matchup is still out there right now. That's Stanback's forced fumble versus Dante running over Nebraska. So curious to see how the Dante stuff plays. Obviously, he doesn't have a ton of plays on here. I think 2 for Dante. One's a 16 seed, probably a tough go of it. Is this the spot where Dante sneaks in and makes a run late in the tourney here? A lot of old school guys have the Dante love, and that game was probably one of the more synonymous ones with putting UCF on the map. Even though we didn't win it, we were in it. We were winning at halftime, I believe. And so that's one of those iconic games in the early stages of UCF. So that'll be interesting to see how that one shakes out overall.
The last I checked before we started recording, that one did have a lead. So Dante is still alive, and every other 10 seed has won so far in this bracket. And like I mentioned on Thursday night, when I did the seedings, I mean, the 7, 8, 9, and 10s, I mean, they could have all been jumbled up and seeded anyway. It kind of just worked out the way it did. So I can see any one of those winnings. I don't consider an upset if a 9 beats an 8 or even if a 10 beats a 7, as we've seen so many times already.
I was surprised at the 5-12 matchup, the 5 matchup being the noise penalty versus Troy. And kudos to you, by the way, for finding all that footage that you included as part of that release, because you had like an entire interview session there. So the noise penalty versus Troy versus Bam Moore's forced fumble against Navy. I thought the recency stuff and the fact that not many people probably remember the 1988 noise penalty game, I thought that one may be a problem, but the noise penalty edged it out. I was surprised at that one.
Yeah, and sometimes Twitter will surprise you. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes not. Like, I understand. Some people are voting for the Adrian Killins touchdown against Michigan over the kick at Alabama. I mean, unless you're Adrian Killins' mom, or I don't think even Killins himself would vote for that. We were down 31-0 in the second quarter of that game. I understand it was his first touchdown. It's the beginning of the UCF fast era and all that stuff. But come on, that was a blowout loss against the kick against Alabama. And some people actually voted for it. So I don't know how to feel about Twitter voting. I feel like I should have veto power on some of these. I'm not going to do it. I almost had to with the helmet, the Hinshaw helmet touchdown. But it's good. I kind of go by the dungeon vote more than anything. Those guys seem to be a little more level-headed, which is crazy.
Which is crazy, yes, actually. I'm going to tell you right now, Mike, Javier Borlegui's not making out of that bracket. He's not going Final Four. J.J. Wharton, the 2 seed, is going to march to victory in that bracket. That's just my early prediction right now.
Yeah, I think that's the strongest 2 seed. The Hale Perriman too has a shot to come out of its bracket. And don't underestimate a couple of these 3 seeds. Some 3 seeds are pretty strong. The Stanback hit against Rutgers, everybody loves that clip. It's just a cool one to watch. And the Brandon Alexander forcing the fumble against Houston could give JJ a tough matchup too. So some of these, once we start getting down to these regional finals, it's going to be interesting to see at least how the percentage goes in some of these votes.
And I'm also curious in that last bracket, the 3-6 matchup, which is coming up, will be Brandon Alexander's forced fumble for the touchback against Houston versus KZ Nelson in that sort of backyard drawn up touchdown run that caused Hypo or Danny White to both look like they were surprised it happened. I'm curious to see how that one shakes out, because obviously some recency bias on that one. It was such an iconic play, and I think the reaction of Danny and Josh actually adds to that a little bit, just how agape they were at what they just saw.
All right. Yeah, the 3-6 matchups are going to be tough ones, and the 4-5s are going to be slobber knockers too. But I think if it comes down to it, and the Elite 8 are all 1s and 2 seeds, or at least 7 out of the 8 or 6 out of 8 are 1s and 2 seeds, I think that just shows how I seeded these things pretty well, right?
Oh yeah, all credit to UCF Mike on this, guys. This was Mike's idea. He texted to me, and an hour later had an entire bracket figured out. He had all the plays written up and figured out. He had all the seating figured out, and not only that, he's keeping track of all these polls, which if you've ever run a Twitter poll is not necessarily as easy, because there's a lot going on there. Adding all the stuff into the dungeon, and then by the way, for the majority of these, he's actually adding in the clips underneath the Twitter poll, and he's going into the Wayback Machine to find some of this stuff. The Franco Grilla field goal, I mean, I wasn't sure how that one existed, but you had that one. You had a whole interview session with the noise penalty game. So not only is Mike giving you the poll, he's giving you the results, but he's also giving you the videos to watch the play. So it's a fun trip down memory lane, Mike. I think everybody's really enjoyed what you put together. It's been cool to watch some of these old plays and really sit down and kind of think about it when you kind of pit them against each other. And the reality is nobody really loses here, because these are all great plays by our university. So the ultimate winner here is all of us as UCF fans. But just hats off to you, my friend, because this has been quite an effort, and so far it's been a smashing success.
Thanks, man. I've really enjoyed doing it. It's been a lot of fun. Putting the clips together is always a good time, and like I said before, I haven't seen some of these plays in a while, so some of them I forgot about. I mean, I didn't forget about the play, but I forgot the magnitude of some of these things and just how cool. And Mark Daniels' call to go along with pretty much all of these, how excited he gets during some of these plays. It's been a lot of fun, so I'm happy to do it, but I'm not going to lie, it has been some work, man. It seems like I'm always doing something with this bracket, whether it's putting together one of these clips or running a poll. It's been kind of exhausting, and I'm going to keep it up for as long as I can. Now, I've been putting out 4 matchups per day for the first round. I think I may do that here for the second round. We could probably knock out this whole second round here by Friday night, and then maybe we'll slow things down into the next week for the Elite Eight.
I was going to ask, what's the schedule? Are you kind of following the NCAA tournament? Are we taking a couple of days off here and starting again over the weekend, or we timing this up with kind of an actual champion there, or are we just plowing through until we get a winner?
Well, I don't know how much work I'm going to get done this weekend. This weekend I'm going away. It is my 10th anniversary with my wife. We're taking a little trip. No kids, no dog, no nothing. So I may not be posting any videos this weekend. I don't know. We'll see. So I'm trying to get through the first 2 rounds by Friday, and maybe take a day or 2 off and come back and do what would that make it? The Elite Eight. So there'd only be 4 matchups to do the next week. Maybe I'll do one. Maybe I'll slow it down to 1 a day, and then we'll have a winner by the end of the following week or the beginning of the next week. Maybe it might line up exactly with the championship game in basketball.
So the good news is we have no idea, but here's what you need to do. Follow at UCF Mike 1 on Twitter. He's releasing all this stuff. We are trying to retweet these from the Sons of UCF account as well. If you just search the hashtag UCF Greatest Plays, or our good friend Cossack Advisor has been compiling all these into what's called the Twitter moment. So they're all also available for you there as well. If you want to catch up on your voting, you maybe missed a couple matchups, or you want to go back and see what happened, you can find all that stuff there. And obviously we will keep you updated here on the show as to where we are and what we're doing. But again, just fantastic work. I'm curious to see how it all shakes out. I think the cool thing about it too is it's provided us with the opportunity to think about like some of these guys we haven't had on the show in a long time. Some of these guys we haven't had the show at all. Our guest tonight, Sha'reff Rashad, he was a 16 seed. He unfortunately drew the unenviable task of going against Mike Hughes. But his iconic hit, kind of brought his name back to our memory banks, and now he's on the show. So it's a really cool trip down memory lane, and Mike deserves all the credit in the world, and maybe a 5-star rating or whatever you want to give him for putting this stuff together.
And it's even a little history lesson for a lot of you younger fans that were not around for any of these, and maybe never even heard of some of these players or some of these plays. Now you know what the noise penalty is. Now you know who Franco Grilla is, and you're gonna see Bobby Joe playing here in a couple hours. So it's good, and it's always good to know the history of the school. We don't have a long history. We didn't start playing football only just 40 years ago. So it's not like Florida Gators or some of these other schools that have over 100 years of football plays to go through. We've seen, if you've been around the program long enough like us, you've seen pretty much all of them. And if you're a young guy, maybe in your 20s, maybe you're a student now, you can go back and appreciate where we came from.
Well, again, follow at UCF Mike 1 on Twitter to get all that information, and make sure you vote early, vote often, and check back for the results. But coming up, the 64th seed in this tournament was kind enough to join us, even though he was seated so low. But he totally made up for it because he was a fantastic conversation. So don't go anywhere. Sha'reff Rashad coming up right after this break here on the Sons of UCF.
Who are the Suns talking to this week? Let's find out.
All right, this week we're joined by probably one of the most reliable, dependable, durable, just a guy who seemed like he made plays all over the field. One of the most consistent guys we had. Secondary, played through the 05 to 08 season, was there for the start of the on-campus stadiums. And again, probably just one of the more consistent players we've ever had wear the black and gold. Happy to have Sha'reff Rashad join us on the show this evening. Sha'reff, first off, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
I appreciate you guys reaching out. I'm really excited about speaking with you, kind of reminiscing here. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, we're looking forward to. Let's start off at the very beginning. You're a local guy, right? Jacksonville, so you're not too far from UCF. How did you end up coming to UCF? Talk us through your kind of recruiting story and ultimately how you ended up coming to Orlando.
Oh wow, that's an interesting one to unpack. So I was a little different than most, to be honest. So I guess at the end of the day, it kind of all rolls up to Coach Beckton. Coach Sean Beckton was the guy who kind of convinced me to make the jump to UCF. But as far as the recruiting phase, it was pretty different than you'd imagine. I went to Episcopal High School, which is a pretty small school. To give you kind of some perspective, I mean, we've maybe had 3 or 4 D1 guys go at the time when I was there in the history, and 2 of them had the same last name, myself and my little brother. So I think they've got 1 or 2 guys since then, but known for a lot of sports, and honestly, they've actually come up quite a bit in the last few years, but at the time weren't necessarily known for football, so it wasn't very highly recruited. I actually tell the story a bunch that I got kicked off of both the all-star teams that have kind of the citywide shrine games, the all-star games at the end of the season, and neither one of the coaches had heard of me. So they were one time they told me I was supposed to play for the East team, and I went to that practice, and they told me they didn't want me. They sent me to the West team. They told me they didn't want me, so I had to go to the city, and the city forced one of the teams to let me play in the all-star game. And Coach Beckton was there, and I played pretty decent there. And obviously, you saw, some of the weaker practice as well, and that's how I ended up at UCF. So it was basically down to UCF and the academies. My dad was military, but I ended up choosing UCF.
When you get on campus as a true freshman, you obviously made an impression on the coaches, because that first game in 2004, you were actually starting against Penn State, starting free safety. And then a freak play, I guess, early in the game, you ended up breaking your hand. You played the rest of that game, though, but you had to sit out the rest of that season. Tell us a little bit about that. How frustrating was it to kind of get a chance? You're in there, you're a starter, and you had to suffer an injury like that early on.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that 24 to 48 hours, probably flew by. I was between being nervous and scared and excited and things like that. So actually, funny story, the night before that game, I was actually not the starter. I was second string. And without getting too deep into the story, about 1 or 2 in the morning, they found out that the starter, one of the starters, I should say, was going to be academically ineligible. So I found out that morning that I was going to be starting. So obviously didn't get any more sleep that night. Coach Aldridge had me up all night, and kind of obviously he was kind of panicking just as much, right, to have a 17-year-old kid out there. But yeah, I'd say by halftime, right, I felt really good about it. I thought everything was going well. And I knew I'd hurt my hand, but I had no clue it was broken. I tell this story all the time as well, but I had actually essentially broke the bone all the way off. And when I took the tape off of my hand in the locker room, my thumb literally just fell to my wrist, fell all the way down. I had torn all the ligaments, broke the bone. So Mary saw it, and obviously it was pretty much the end of the season for me. But I didn't even notice it until the game was over. But it was just a lot of fun running around, being out there. And it was frustrating knowing that I could have played, the whole year, my freshman year, but it was also exciting knowing that, I was good enough to play and was going to have 4 years ahead of me.
Hold on a second. So that didn't hurt? Like, you weren't in pain throughout the game with that type of injury? Did you feel pain?
I was, but what happened was it was so swollen. And, when you tape your wrist, you tape, between your wrist and then you alternate around your hand. So your thumb's kind of locked in there. So it was super swollen, and I couldn't really move it. But, with the adrenaline and just playing, and it wasn't, obviously it was locked in because of the tape. So it wasn't, moving around too much. But then once the tape came off, that's when I realized it was snapped and torn and all that fun stuff.
Oof.
Did they give you the Ronnie Lott option of just cutting your thumb off and you play the rest of the year?
You know what? I'm going to say they did, and I promise you, even if they didn't, I'm sorry, I'll do the opposite. I'm going to say they didn't, but even if they did, I certainly wouldn't have done it. Not at that age. Maybe if it's your last game, right? The first one, you got plenty left. So I think I keep all my digits as a freshman.
Good decision. So the team the next year was the greatest turnaround in college football history. We went from winless to 8 wins in 2005. What were the expectations going into that season? Because we're coming off a year where we didn't win a game, but now O'Leary's kind of get his system in place. What are you guys thinking going into 2005?
Honestly, I think it wasn't even going into the season thinking like what was our record going to be this year. It was just about getting the win, right? Going through the previous year, we had a lot of talent, obviously, that materialized over the next few years, and even with some guys that ended up in the NFL the very next year. But it just, for some reason, it wasn't working out. And we knew we had, the ability, but at the same time, we weren't thinking about going undefeated, nothing like that. We just wanted to get a game. We just wanted to win a game. So I would say the expectations, I don't want to say low, right? Because it wasn't like we weren't even projecting for the whole season. We really just wanted to get the first win. And I think once we did that, it's kind of like you get the monkey off the shoulder, and you're not worried about anything superstitious or the momentum always going against you somehow. And before you knew it, we got rolling and kept on winning. So it was just funny to see, and I'm sure a lot of guys talk about this as well. But you go from almost hiding on campus to feeling like you can actually go to class and put your hood down. After the first year going defeated. So it was cool to be a part of the turnaround, but at the same time, everybody was always still tight knit and still had hope, and we were always working hard. So nobody ever gave up, but it was definitely rough.
So when we finally end the losing streak against Marshall at home, we storm the field, we tear down the goalposts. Are you thinking, man, do we do this after every win? Because this is your first one. You don't know what to expect?
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping we did it after every win. Right? It was that much fun. I was actually I don't remember what the delay was, but I was down there for quite a bit downtown. So I don't even remember all the details. But all I remember is, however I was getting back to campus, I saw the portion of the goalpost that was like being confiscated on the way back. So it was cool because people just, kind of went crazy. And even just being out there, it felt like we had won the conference championship, the national championship. It was definitely much more to win. And, even the next day, everybody was still excited coming in to work out the next day. People were, running around and laughing. It was a really cool feeling. But at the same time, I think we realized it was a start of, an actual season that could be productive as long as we, stuck to what we were being told.
Well, you got a lot of playing time that year, and it was really kind of a young secondary overall. Take us into that room. Were you guys just successful because you were so young and you didn't know any better? Were you guys just preparing really, really hard, kind of in the weeks to up to the game? Was it just a lot of talent? What do you think kind of contributed to how quickly you guys gelled together and how well you played?
You know what? I think it had a lot to do with the relationships, right? We at some point had just decided that we were going to figure it out. As weird as that sounds, you can only get yelled at so much, and I think a lot of the times people forget how many plays sometimes the four of us, Joe, Jonell, Jason, and myself, gave up, in those first couple of years, and obviously we had showed signs of promise, but a lot went wrong too, like just not being as experienced. But I think at one point we all had kind of just sat down and decided that we were just going to have fun, and we knew we were going to make mistakes, but we just started going for it in a way. And I think, again, we all kind of came together and made that decision, and we started, having a little bit more fun at practice. And we get yelled at a little bit more, right, for, celebrating a little too long and things like that. But we turned it into a thing where we knew we were young, we knew we were going to make mistakes, but at the same time, we knew we were talented and we could, actually help the team out and make some plays as well. When you got Joe out there and, Jonell out there, it's easy for Jason and myself. I actually live right up the road from Jason, believe it or not. We golf every weekend. So, we were all really close, and I think that helped us out on the field. I think Coach Huxtable didn't like that sometimes when, Jonell and myself would decide to switch positions before the play to try to confuse the quarterback, and we do little weird things like that. But by the time we were seniors, we knew the defense so well that we were able to just go out and have fun. So I think that was the start of it. But I think the misconception was that we were out there just holding it down, and we have some flashy plays that made us look good, but I can promise you there was just so much going wrong out there sometimes.
Well, something must have went right, because obviously 2005 ends up in the first bowl experience for UCF, which back at that time was a program who we got snubbed earlier in the late 90s, so it was a big deal to get to a bowl game. And you guys draw Hawaii as your bowl destination, which is, probably literally as far as you could get from Orlando. What do you remember about that whole experience? First of all, just being selected for a bowl, finding out it's Hawaii, getting there, and then obviously, the game took on a little bit of a life of its own there, and the ending probably wasn't what we wanted. Take us back to that season and that Hawaii Bowl and everything you remember about it.
Yeah, that whole year, it almost felt, it's funny because, the year before, or, some of the years prior, I should say, it felt like it was inevitable for things to go wrong sometimes, and it was the exact opposite that year, right? It just felt like if we were down, if we were losing, if something wasn't working, it was inevitable that we were gonna figure it out, and the offense was gonna score, and defense was gonna stop whatever we needed to do. It just felt like for the most part, it was gonna happen, and it did. For the majority of that season, just about every game there. And I think it was an experience for everybody once we found out, one, that we were going to a bowl game alone, and then two, the draw that we got. I don't think anybody was expecting it. At least kind of the bowl, being that far away or being that prestigious of a bowl game. But we were happy about it, and the week was a lot of fun. Getting the bags and the clothes and things like that, and just experiencing it. The flight was ridiculously long, and I remember I was between like Terrell Troop and somebody else about his size, and it was terrible. On the way there, I could barely move. But once we got there, it was awesome. And we just, I don't know, it was just a lot of fun, right? The times, being there, having, practice in a different place. Obviously, the game didn't go as well as we wanted it to, but it was just awesome to be recognized for all the hard work, because we were working just as hard when we were losing, to get back to winning. So, having a bowl game be the kind of the culmination of that, the reward, I think was a good experience.
Well, take us in the locker room after that game. Obviously, it ends on a fluke play. For those who don't recall, Matt Prater, who went on to have a pretty good career, by the way, missed the extra point essentially, and we lose by one. Take us in the locker room. What was the emotion like? Were you guys just sad, frustrated? Were you guys happy that at least you got there? What was the mood like post game?
I'd go partially A there, partially sad, partially B, frustrated. Definitely no C. Nobody was happy that we were there. It was just, I think it was the most frustrating because we felt like we should have won it, right? And obviously you had, Prater, down on himself and what you would expect out of any, team. People were trying to pick him up about it. It was an entire game, but at the same time, it hurt. And then, of course, you got to think about it for the next, few hours. There were quite a few hours, when they're flying back. But at the same time, I think once that Monday rolled around, right, or that next week rolled around, then it became appreciative of everything that we had done that season and thinking back on the memories. But it was definitely all bad in the locker room because, we were competitive just like anybody is in a bowl game, so you wanted to win it. So it was rough losing it that way, but at the same time, we knew that we had, had a good year and we had fought as best we could on that day.
We had Prater on the show probably like 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago, and he said that he still maybe like once a month or something hears it from somebody about that kick. So he's still reliving it all these years later.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and Prater was a good friend of mine. He was older than I was, but we got along pretty well. So I hung out with him back at his house on the weekend and stuff like that. So he was a good friend at the time, and I was one of the people trying to make sure he was all right a few days later. And he made it out just fine. But I can imagine it was a rough one, especially being, as good as he was, right? It's kind of like the one time that his powers let him down. But like you said, he's recovered nicely.
Yeah, you can joke about it now. He's hitting 63-yard field goals.
Exactly.
He can't hit an extra point.
Yeah, man. Don't remind me.
So 2006 season, I think we kind of took a little step backwards. What do you think kind of contributed to that? Was it just a hangover from the 05? Was it injuries? What exactly happened in 2006? Why did we go a little back?
You know what? I think looking back, it's easier to admit than it would have been while you're in it. Because while you're in it, you're still working hard, you're still doing things. But I think I don't know if we got better as much as we did, the previous season, right? We worked hard, we maintained, and everybody was still, doing what they were, supposed to do as a Division I football players. But it's hard to have that same, grit when you're coming from, the bottom, literally the bottom, and trying to just gain some respect. And then we had it. And again, I don't want this to be any indication that we weren't trying or that people were letting off, but I just don't know if we grew as much, right? I don't know if we were able to improve as much. And then obviously it was a conference at the time that was competitive, and we just kind of came out and weren't able to put it together. And I also think that there were more games that year where, it was either offense or defense was playing well. And, we couldn't really put full games together on both sides of the ball to where, in that previous year, of course, it was kind of feeding off of one another, right? Offense was scoring quick or, running down the clock, whatever they needed to do, and defense was holding when it needed to. And that year, it seemed like even when there were games or one side of the game was playing well, the other side, might not have had a great game. So I think there was a lot that went into it, and obviously we lost a lot of talent as well. But I think it was just we might have lost a little bit of the grit that we had the previous year.
Well, you were there for some special times. We just talked about the first ever bowl game. And then in 2007, we open up the on-campus stadium. You get to see that thing get built day by day out there by the practice fields. What was it like finally to step foot on campus and play a game against Texas?
I mean, first of all, before the game even started, it was amazing not having to be on the bus for, an hour trying to get there, right? And don't get me wrong, that was, that was a beautiful stadium, and we appreciated it just as much as anybody would have. But, just being able to wake up and walk over, right, to get ready in the same locker room that you always get ready in and, be around the same atmosphere and not have to kind of go into our own, a specific, ritual of driving, somewhere far away and something that we didn't see every day, right? It just wasn't as comfortable. It didn't feel as much like home. To where, once the stadium went up and like you said, we were able to see it, we were kind of right around the bend there, and then those new convocation buildings. So we saw it as it was going up, and by the time it was ready, we were so excited about it. And obviously, the way that they had scheduled us to open up the stadium made it even more exciting. So it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. And it was definitely more, it was more prideful as well, right? There was a lot more pride associated with, holding it down at home when home actually felt like home.
That was another game where we really probably should have won that game. So many things went wrong I remember Lawrence Young, they had an interception in his hands that maybe was shielded in the fourth quarter.
We to this day, like you said about Prater, to this day, every time I see Lawrence, I'll say, not that I haven't seen him as much lately, but the years that followed. But at the same time, if you watch that game film, it wouldn't have been a close game without Lawrence. So we wouldn't have been in that position in the first place. I mean, he played absolutely ridiculous that game. So it's always a joke because again, they probably would have had 20 more points if Lawrence wasn't on the field, but it would have been nice for him to catch a pop up as well.
Yeah. I mean, Israel fumbles on the sideline. They recovered just in bounds. There's so many little things that could have gone one way or the other. We win that game. What was the tougher one to take? That one?
Can you repeat that? I lost
it. I'm sorry. What was the tougher loss for you to deal with? Losing that first home game or the Hawaii Bowl that we just talked about?
Honestly, I'd probably say the Texas game. Because there was just a lot more. There was a lot more build up to that one, and even though the other one, was the first bowl game, obviously when you've got Texas as a first opponent, in a home stadium of the year, that's what we talked about all summer, right? We didn't know we were going to the Hawaii Bowl to the end of the season, so we, maybe a month or two, right? But building up to the Texas game, it was kind of the focus all summer. We had done so much scouting and so much preparing. And then it all worked, right? Everything that we had prepared, that's what we were seeing, and the talent was there, and we almost had it, right? So I think that was the one that hurt the most, and mainly because of what it could have been, right? It was still a great game. We still had played really well, but it could have been, something that's still been being played on ESPN today, like the Appalachian State game, right? That it literally would have been of that magnitude at that time, and it kind of would have been a much more of a memorable thing for college football just as much as for us. So I'd say that one hurt a little worse, but at the same time it was an amazing day, and I'm sure everybody watches that clip every once in a while just to listen to it.
Well, speaking of losses that hurt, what do you think of when I say 64-12?
What do I think of when you say 64-12? To be honest, I'm not even sure. Which game would that have been?
So that was our loss to the Cows, our rivals to the west there. 64-12. They put it on us that year.
Yeah, you know what? That year was it was bad. And what's funny? And I'm surprised I don't remember that, because when I was with the Redskins, they had a receiver by the name of Torres Johnson, who was kind of their number one guy that year, and he was my roommate. Like we ended up living together when we played on the Redskins, and he would have this joke where he'd always have that game playing, because he would always get home from practice before me, And in the living room every day, he'd have that game playing on the TV. So I'm surprised I didn't remember that. But it was rough, to be honest. I mean, we were running all over the place. I don't even know what went on. There was one of the things where it started raining, and before we knew it, it was pouring. And the attack that they had, the style that they had is, they were somewhat what UCF has been over the last few years, right? Kind of innovative and throwing it all over the place, and we just weren't ready that day. I don't think they were that much better than us, but we just weren't ready that day. And before we knew it, it was 64-12. So I don't know. Maybe I forgot it on purpose, right? Maybe I blocked it out because it was rough.
First of all, how did you not get a new roommate? I feel like that's grounds to lose a roommate.
He was actually a pretty good guy, believe it or not. But trust me, I had some ammunition as well. So yeah.
So, but obviously that turns around. We shake that one off, and we go on to win the conference that year. So, obviously, with a tough loss like that to to our rival, how did you guys rebound from that? Because obviously, I mean, you could have packed it in and said, "Oh my goodness, the sky's falling. We're doing this," but you didn't. What transpired? What as a team do you think led you guys to continue on and win the conference title that year?
I would say we just knew what the consequence of giving up was, right? And I'm not saying we gave up when we were undefeated, but we just knew that, if we didn't bounce back, we could end up with another, terrible season, for lack of a better word, right? And we knew what it felt like to, be early in a year and kind of know that the rest of the season is going to be miserable, or at least that it's looking like it's going that way, or that it seems like the luck's going that way. So we just wanted to make sure we came back and shook it off and basically worked as hard as we could to get those wins right afterwards. We wanted to make sure that we didn't stay down. That way, we could continue to keep moving, and we were able to bounce back, and one win turned into another, and then before we knew it, we were on a roll. So I agree. I mean, I think it was early, but it was a turning point to where it could have been a really bad season again. But like I said, I think we just experienced that before and did absolutely everything we could to make sure we didn't let that one game kind of determine what the rest of the season was going to be like.
You personally, for that season, you finished the year with over 100 tackles, which hadn't happened in a handful of years before you did it. How proud are you of that accomplishment, looking back on it, getting over the century mark in tackles?
You know what? It's funny. I'm really proud of it, and that was something I actually didn't know until it was released. I remember I didn't really track anything like that. I think game film and statistics and all that has come a long way. Not that we didn't have access to it, but it wasn't as easily accessible, to the players unless you were really digging for it. And I wasn't much of a stats guy, so I didn't really know that till the season was over. And I was more proud of it just because, again, Jason and myself every year would have a competition as to who had the most tackles. So that was a year where I knew I had beaten him, and, he was literally trying to watch film and find tackles that they had missed of his to make it add up to what I had. But it was an accomplishment for sure, just to kind of get over the century mark there. But really just to know that because having that many tackles, it means that you're around the ball, right? It means that you're helping defense. So I was just excited to be relevant. I know that sounds weird, but just to be somebody that was actually a leader on the defense as opposed to just being out there. And that was a good feeling. But that was a fun season. And it's just funny how much easier tackling gets as you age, because I remember every single tackle I had to make. As a freshman, I felt like it was life or death once I got within 5 yards. And you get so nervous to where, by the time I was a junior or senior, I was kind of looking at the guy as he was running and analyzing it, saying, I'm just gonna trip him this way, or save my shoulder here and get a nice little. But then at the same time, it was almost like you could analyze the way you wanted to hit people by the time you were, that old. So it just really felt like the game had slowed down. So there was definitely a technique to getting that many tackles and not hurting myself all the time. But it was awesome.
Well, we go to the Liberty Bowl at the end of that year, and that's another one that I think we let slip away. We could have won that one. Are you still trying to get the sound of the cowbells out of your head, first of all?
Oh, it was awful. It was absolutely terrible. We knew it, right? I mean, this is nothing new. I'm sure a lot of people that play them do this, but we obviously had them at practice all week long, and we had literally half the staff on the sideline just ringing cowbells. So we got used to it. Going in, you thought we were used to it at least, and then you get in the stadium and it's coming from all directions and coming from all angles, and it was definitely annoying. But at the same time, I think that's a game where we played really well. Offense didn't have their best game, but they did enough to keep us in it, and we were playing really well on defense, and then there was enough to keep us in it there as well. But yeah, that's definitely one that one probably hurt just as bad. I remember there was a play that I almost had an interception that would have probably sealed it as well, because there was nobody there, and it was a play that they had practiced all week. We had practiced all week, I said. I knew exactly what they were going to run, and I cut underneath it, and then the quarterback overthrew it. I mean, I had come underneath the route and was standing right there, and the quarterback just threw the ball, 15 feet in the air. So could have won it on that one. And then kind of obviously anytime you've got a last minute goal line drive, it'll bother you as well. But it was rough, especially since it was, who they considered to be, an SEC big time opponent. And that was kind of the first time we had done that in a bowl game. But again, you reflect on it a couple of days later and realize it had such a good season. But that's definitely one that I agree. I think we definitely should have won that one as well.
Well, you had, I think, probably the best highlight from that game. You lay the guy out. How often do you go back onto YouTube and watch that clip? Because that is cool
what? It's funny. I don't do it much, but just about every time you meet somebody who somehow finds out that you used to play sports, you used to play football, everyone in every sport, right? If you get searched on YouTube, for me, that's kind of the one that pops up first. So. I get it quite a bit, and people send it to me and say, "Have you seen this?" And of course, I've seen it, 1,000 times. It's funny because I got, honestly get made fun of for just about everything, because I don't really know what my celebration was when I did that. I kind of just started shaking, and I don't know what happened. So, a lot of people have good memories associated with that play, but I literally got made fun of that entire week by just about everyone. I remember Emeka Okamore was the worst. He was the one that thought it was hilarious. So he would just play it all week and ask me what I was doing. But it's memorable for sure. And that was kind of another testament to coaching on that game. I mean, they had 7 or 8 plays that we knew exactly what they were going to do. Honestly, it was mad at myself for not intercepting that, because as soon as they started running the play, I could have went and got the ball. I knew they were going to do that swing route. So, but because I knew it was coming, obviously I got to take off a little early and got there before you realized where I was at. So it was a fun one. But yeah, definitely probably one of the more memorable, if not the most memorable plays for my career at UCF.
When you hit somebody that clean, do you even feel it? What's the feeling?
You know what? You really don't. And then that day I think everything was frozen as well. So I definitely didn't feel it. But I definitely felt all kind of a culmination of all the hits the next day. So I don't know if any of the pain that I had was from that. But at the time, you don't. I mean, you don't feel it at all. Not even a little.
Well, the other guy must have been in pain the next day, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure he felt it. I'm sure he felt it for a little bit as well. But I'm sure he delivered something just like that once or twice in his career as well. It usually comes full circle.
Sha'reff, is that a penalty today in college football? Do you think you'd get flagged if you did that today?
You know what? That one, I don't think so, just because it was kind of the one where I was able to tuck and turn, and there was no helmet-to-helmet contact at all. Now, I think they would have automatically reviewed it, because anytime anybody gets hit hard, it's an automatic review. But I do think that would have been one where they would have let it go. I think that one would have been clean if you take a look at it in slow motion.
How much do you think that impacts like young DBs right now coming up, thinking about, I mean, and that play for you read the play, you made the hit, right? You probably weren't thinking too much about strike zone, where you were. Like, how much do you think that impacts the young players coming up today?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's got to be a lot, right? For me, I mean, obviously, an unnecessary roughness, the targeting of sorts, kind of back in the day before targeting was a thing. It was egregious, right? Like, it was obvious. You had to go out of your way to get one, right? To where now it's kind of, a lot of the times people just trying to make a football play results in something that they didn't really intend to occur. So I don't know how I would take it, right? Because that's another aspect of thinking that they have to do to make the play. Like you said, for us, it was, you gotta remember the call, right? You gotta know your assignment. You got to, make the physical play to be there. You got to be an athlete to be there. But then once that happened, if you were in the vicinity, you just go for the tackle, right? There was really no worry about how you made the tackle, to where now it's almost add another element to make defense harder, right? You can get there and do everything right, but now you got to think about, the angle of, where you want to put your head and how you want to hit them and things like that. Or, was he looking, or can I go all out, or do I need to just push him out of bounds, right? So it's I just think it's another level of thinking or another decision that has to be made on every play that probably makes it, much harder.
All right, so we asked this question of every receiver or every DB we've had on the show. Do you consider UCF to be wide receiver U or DBU? Because you guys have put a bunch of DBs into the league. I mean, I can sit here and name them all. You put a bunch of DBs in the league. Obviously, we've had a bunch of receivers in the league. Guys like Brandon Marshall, Mike Sims-Walker, who had some really good all-pro careers. But don't sleep on the DBs. Do you consider UCF DBU or wide receiver U?
You know what? And I know this is a terrible answer. I'm curious if anybody else has ever said this, but it seems to me like it comes in phases, right? I seem like it seems like it comes in 4 to 5 year phases where you've got, years where you've got, Tavares Capers and Luther Huggins and Brandon Marshall and, Mike Walker and all these guys on the team at the same time. And then, you've got years where you've got, 4 or 5 defensive backs that, go to the league and stay, right, the next few years. And obviously there was a time where in the year that we beat Baylor, I kid you not, I would put that receiving core against any receiving core that I've ever seen in college football right now. The names weren't out there, but, with JJ and Speedy and all those guys that they had out there that year, I mean, I don't know if anybody could have stopped them, right? And I think they had 5 or 6 guys on that team that should have got drafted, let alone, within the next few years. But I feel like it comes in phases. There's years where you've got UCF receivers going in the first couple rounds and doing well in the NFL for 3 years in a row. And then the receivers may fall back. I say fall back, not in a bad way, right? Just, rise to the top. You may see the DBs be a little bit better for 4 or 5 years where you've got, the Mike Hughes and guys like that going back to back to back. So I know that doesn't really answer it either way, but I don't want to say both because I think it's clear. But each time it's clear what that phase is, whether there's DBs coming in for the next few years or receivers.
Well, if it helps you at all, every receiver we've had on has always said it's wide receiver U.
Oh, of course. No, I can promise you that. And like I said, I mean, it's hard to deny the DBs that have come out of UCF to say, that's not a correct answer. But at the same time, it's hard to deny the receivers that have come out, in the past and right now as well. So where I think beauty's in the eye of the beholder. If you're talking to somebody on defense, it's probably going to be DBU. If you're talking to somebody who's a receiver, you can guarantee they're going to say wide receiver.
How much are you able to stay in touch with some of those guys? I know obviously they weren't all in your class, and some of those guys came before you and after you. How often are you guys able to get together and run into guys that you've seen maybe in either before your time or after your time?
I'd say for the most part, during the year, during the season, I think always serves as an ability to get everybody together. This year was a little different, obviously, but even the guys that you may have, I don't want to say forgotten about, but people you don't talk to as much, when you see them at a game once a year, it usually resparks the relationships. I'd say for sure, whoever's in your class, those guys always, right? But then you always are a little bit closer to a few people in different classes. And I think sometimes that does have, it is dependent a little bit, upon, some of the guys that ended up playing after school that you still got to see, even though, might have been on different teams in the NFL. But, when I was coming out, I was able to train with Brandon Marshall in the offseason a couple times and, the Jay and guys like that to where a lot of the times the people that you end up seeing for more years after college are the guys that are still playing. But at the same time, I think everybody did, especially from your class at UCF. So for me, I mean, I'd say there's at least, 30 to 40 guys easily. I'm actually in Atlanta, Georgia these days, and there's probably 6 or 7 of us out here. I see Bruce and Terrell and Jason and a lot of those guys and Kamara. I mean, I see them. I'm able to see them quite a bit. But then you've got, a lot of guys in Florida as well. So I think it depends on geography, who you see the most. But everybody that you were close with, you definitely still talk to them. And if it's not somebody you see a lot, you definitely get to see them and talk to them during the season. Because, even Rocky, I've known Rocky Ross since I was 10 or 11 years old, and we played Little League baseball and basketball and all that stuff together. And I see him all the time as well. So there's a lot of guys I still see, but for the most part, you're able to catch up with everyone at least once or twice a year when the season rolls around.
Were you able to go to the Peach Bowl a couple years ago in Atlanta with all these guys?
Oh yeah, no, I was here for sure. I was here. There was a bunch of us. We probably had 40 guys, all out. actually remember that. That was dumb. Josh, I know Josh Sitton was there because that's another. I mean, I knew a lot of random occurrences, but I grew up with Josh in Pensacola before I even moved to Jacksonville, and we were really, really good friends, and we were kids and hadn't seen each other, 7-8 years, and we just happened to be on our visit to UCF the same day, and that was kind of why one of the main reasons I chose UCF, and one of the main reasons Josh did as well is because we were like, oh man, we can go here together, because like I said, we were friends when we were kids and hadn't seen each other, and I don't know if it was 10, 7, whatever, but not since like we were in elementary school, and then turns out, granted he grew, a couple feet on me. We were actually the two fastest people on our little league soccer team. We were like the two fastest kids running around, me and Josh. And the next time I saw him, he was, a couple feet taller, a couple 100 pounds bigger, and I was still small. But I still knew who he was as soon as I saw him. But it's I get to see guys quite a bit just because we like to stay in touch as much as possible.
Speaking of Josh, I forget which guy told us the story of O'Leary before you guys went out to Hawaii. Him telling Sitton, they harpoon out there. You need to be careful. Do you remember that story?
I do remember that. Yeah, Coach O'Leary was good for 1 or 2 jokes a month. At most, one of them would land. So that was definitely one of his better jokes. I'll give him that.
Were you guys calling him the White Horse back then? Do you remember when that started?
Yep. It was the White Horse. I remember that. I don't know who started it, but that's definitely what they called him back in the day. And either that, you had to be brave enough to talk to him in the first place. So you definitely wouldn't say it to his face, but that was kind of the nickname behind the scenes.
We had him on here, and we actually told him about it. It was the first time he had heard it. He laughed it off. He thought it was pretty funny. He said he thought you guys had a bunch of other worse names for him. So
no, for sure. That was the PG name for Coach O'Leary. He had a couple others as well that usually came out in anger during workouts.
Nothing you're going to share on here with us?
Nah, not breaking another nickname. Of course not.
Do you have any other O'Leary stories? Any good ones? Any jokes that you remember from him?
You know what? I'm trying to think of anything. It's not even necessarily really any stories, but and I'm sure you've had some guys come on to say the same thing. But he had it in him, right? And obviously he wasn't the nicest at all times. And I say nice as in he was a starting coach, but. If you had an issue and you sat down in his office, he was a good dude. He was funny. He was a personable guy, and we actually got along pretty well, Coach O'Leary and myself, because I was always kind of one of the ones that was doing my best to stay out of trouble. But nothing specific other than every time he crack a smile, it was fun. You catch him every once in a while, breaking character. And he tried to snap out of it really quick, but you could tell that, every once in a while he enjoyed himself out there just as much as we did. He just couldn't show it all the time.
Obviously, UCF has undergone a bunch of changes here in the last couple of months. What do you make of Gus Malzahn now as the head coach, and where do you think the program goes from here?
You know what? I'm excited about it. I really am. I think anytime you can bring, visibility as well as, talent, obviously, as a coach to a university, it's a positive for the school. Definitely appreciative of the coaches who have, continued to build the program in the past few years here. But I think it's going to be good for the school, right? I think we've already seen, with some of the publicity and some of the, transfers and recruits and things like that. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to, can that guy motivate people, right? You can get the right guys in there and not have the motivator or the person that can really run a program. He just really seems like he has kind of that factor that's able to motivate and, rally the troops. And I think that's what we need at UCF, right? We're always going to have the talent. We're always going to have the speed. We're always going to have the recruits and things of that nature, at least now, right? To where I think if we can just get somebody that can keep everybody excited out there and having fun, and he really seems like the mold that's kind of been working for the last few years here, right? To just make sure the guys are enjoying themselves and really want to be out there. And I think the fans and the city will kind of continue to rally behind us. And I think it'll be really good. I really do. I think we're going to be where we want to be conference-wise and wins-wise and rankings-wise here for the next few years.
We had Doug Gabriel on a few weeks ago, and he mentioned that for a while, he personally, this was just his opinion, he felt like maybe he wasn't, or some of the former players weren't as welcome the last couple of years around UCF. Did you experience anything like that? And do you have any plans? I know we've seen a bunch of guys who are now out of practice and stuff. Do you have any plans to maybe try to make it down and watch practice?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I didn't go back. Obviously we got Doug and guys like that. I love Doug to death. He was somebody that helped me out quite a bit, all throughout my career. And I think they see it a little bit more, right? Because they're, when you're in the city, you can, you have a little bit more access. So for me, it was really only coming back a lot of the time for the games and things like that. And obviously, I would go see Mary and the training staff, things like that, as much as possible when I'd come back. But so I obviously could never speak on someone else's experiences and what they went through. But for me, I think it was just more of a disconnect than anything, right? I think when once we lost kind of the coaching staffs that we were familiar with, I think there could have been a better effort maybe to kind of something, right? I don't know if it's an event, and I had no solution for this, right? I don't know how you do something like that, but just making sure that kind of the transfer of power, for lack of a better phrase, hey, these are the new guys. Let's all meet up and maybe do something to where it just felt like you knew everybody one day and then you didn't know anybody the next day. So it's never like anybody told me or made me feel uncomfortable. I didn't know, right? I didn't know anybody. And I think there was really no way to figure out if we were still welcome, if that makes sense. And by the time, people started trying, it was even more, new staff. So I've always felt welcome in the building, right? Because, like I said, as long as Mary and the team was there. So I've never felt as if, someone was shooing me away. But at the same time, I felt like I could have known the new guys a little better, right? The new coaching staffs, and that's gone for a couple different staffs, and they've all done a great job. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm happy about. But I think there's probably better ways to engage, and I think we can help figure those out as well as former players.
Well, we appreciate you've been very generous with your time. So we end every interview around here with a couple of quick fun questions. Could be about music, movies, sports, could be anything at all. So here's my first one for you. If you were in a bit of a sticky situation and you needed a getaway driver, someone to get you out of someplace in a hurry, who are you going to call to be your getaway driver?
So is this someone like on the UCF?
Yeah, former teammate. Which former teammate do you want as your getaway driver?
Okay. Well, I'm gonna start this off by saying rest in peace. He's no longer with us, but Breon Rogers would be the first person. The first person there, without a doubt. You can call Breon at any time, anywhere. He wouldn't ask any questions, and he was known to speed a little bit as well, and he'd get there quickly. So I'd say for sure it would have been Breon Rogers.
All right, we're running a March Madness tournament right now. I know you've seen the plays, the greatest plays in UCF history. What, in your opinion, is the greatest play we've ever had?
Oof, if I had to go with the greatest play that we've ever had, oh man, I think I've got to go with emotion. It's got to be the Mike Hughes return against USF. I don't know if I've ever screamed that loud. I don't know if I've ever run around my house while watching the game like I was there. I think just the culmination of who it was, the timing of it in the game, what had just happened, I think that to me was probably the most excited I've ever been while watching the game. If I had to pick a number 2 and a number 3, I'd go with the J.J. Wharton catch is maybe a 2/3, or I don't even know about the next one. Maybe those are probably my top 2. And again, for me, it's not even necessarily the catch was ridiculous. That's just physics alone that put that in the top 2. But the excitement behind that return against USF was probably I'd say make it the greatest play.
I think that is going to end up winning the whole thing. I think that's a clear favorite right now.
Yeah, I'd say. And honestly, I'm watching them kind of on I think it's on the UCF football Facebook page, but I don't know what the order is, to be honest. But I think that one should win, if I'm being honest.
All right, well, real March Madness is going on now, the basketball tournament. All of our brackets are probably really messed up right now. Who do you have winning it all in the basketball tournament?
Yep. So I had Illinois, so I'm pretty much done. I'm in a bracket with a bunch of the old guys, kind of like Ian Castillo and a lot of those guys. They do one every year. Rocky's in it, so they made fun of me yesterday once that was kind of over with. But we don't have many people that are still alive in it that either. So we'll see. But yeah, I had Illinois winning it all. I'm usually a Carolina guy, but I was able to predict them to getting out pretty early like they did. Unfortunately, hurt my heart to have to do it. But yeah, I was wrong as well. So we'll see who comes out on top. But it's definitely not going to be me.
You have one of the coolest names I can remember ever for a UCF football player. How did you get your name? Do you know the story behind it? How your parents came up with that?
Yes and no. It's weird. So we're the only Rashads in our family. My dad actually changed his name to Sha'reff Rashad. He was born Jesse Simmons, so we've got kind of a bunch of Simmons and some Rashads, right? We're a little different. But I don't know the full story behind it. We do know that it was kind of after my dad was deployed overseas and he came back and changed his name. And I don't know if he's ever planning on telling us why. We've asked before, but we have no clue. My dad's he's a pastor, a Christian. So, a lot of people think it has something to do with, obviously, a certain religion. And I don't want to say certain religion, it was associated with being Muslim or something of that nature. Has nothing to do with it. Sha'reff Rashad was just the name that he chose, but obviously it's not religious because he's a pastor in a different religion. But yeah, I actually do not know. I just know that he changed his name to Sha'reff Rashad and named me after him. So if we ever figure it out, maybe we can do some type of an update.
All right, what was your favorite spot to get food when you were in Orlando? Did you have a go-to spot where if you needed a good meal, you had a place?
I was there. I don't know if anybody else says they were the original Hughes guy at Lion. I started the Hugh Magoo's training because if you remember that year was the year that when they opened, it was basically when we got to Orlando. I'm literally still friends with most of the people from the Hugh Magoo staff to this day. Like I hang out with them. I know where they live because we were that close. Even in my off season when I was playing for the Giants, when I was training at UCF in the off season, I would work at Hugh Magoo's just for fun. They weren't paying me, nothing like that. I would literally just wipe the tables down just so I could hang out there all day and get free food. So for sure, that's where we went. And I remember we got in trouble once. Coach O'Leary called us out of practice because some of the parents, some of the fans, I should say, had seen, they said they saw me, Bruce, and Terrell at Huey's every day because we legitimately went every day. It was at one point where they actually did the math and they looked at how many times I had been there and how much money I had spent over my UCF career. And I think it was in like the $4,000 range. It was ridiculous, but for sure it was Hugh Magoo's.
What's your go-to order?
Just fried plate, double fries, no slaw.
When's the last time
you can't even say it like that now. Now it's like a dinner plate fried. It's different, but at the time it was just a fried plate with double fries and no slaw.
When's the last time you've been back to Huey's?
It wasn't that long ago. I was actually in Orlando last year, so I'd probably say 7 or 8 months ago, maybe. But anytime I'm in Orlando, I 100% go at least twice. Well, we appreciate you taking some. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Just one more. What's your favorite holiday? We just had St. Patrick's Day. Do you favor Thanksgiving, Christmas? What's your favorite one?
Well, St. Patrick's Day is actually my brother's birthday, so it's definitely not St. Patrick's Day. I'll probably go with Thanksgiving. I like to eat and kind of being able to be around family, sit and eat and sleep. That's about as ideal as a holiday gets for me. Yeah, that's my favorite. And actually, now that you mentioned birthdays, I think when I looked you up today, your birthday is October 6th. Is that right? It is. Mine's October 5th. You just edged me out. It's okay. I had to get the read first, like playing golf. I let you show me the way, and then I came in right after. Well, I got a couple of years on you too.
Well, since you said Thanksgiving, it's an old debate that Mike and I always have. So when I have my Thanksgiving dinner plate, my foods don't touch. Like I got my turkey here, I got my potatoes next to it, I got my stuffing next to it, I got whatever else. Like they don't touch. They're all perfectly spaced out on my plate. Mike just puts everything together like a big pile, mashes it all up and eats it. How do you eat your Thanksgiving plate? So this applies to Thanksgiving for sure. But to me, it applies to all foods because I'm the same way. Like, but it's weird. Sometimes they can touch and sometimes they can't. So if it's like rice, corn, right? If they're things that don't run, I don't care if they touch. But if it's like gravy, right, or if it's like a sauce or something like that, then I don't want that running into my other food because
If it's dry, obviously I don't want it to be dry, but yeah, as long as it's not something that's liquid, I don't mind if it touches. So like syrup, I don't want my syrup to touch any of my other food other than the pancakes, but I don't care if the hash browns and the bacon touch, right? So same thing with Thanksgiving, as long as it's not like a gravy or something like that, I didn't mind if they touched.
But the whole point of the gravy is to put it on the dry stuff.
No, the gravy is for individual items. The gravy can go like on the mashed potatoes, or the gravy can go on the biscuit. The gravy is not just a universal topping for all of my food.
No, I think you're wrong on that one.
I think it was a good answer. I think it was a good answer, personally. I like his answer. I think it was a really good answer. And obviously a really good conversation, Sha'reff. We appreciate you taking so much time to talk about your UCF career, and we thank you for taking a bunch of time out of your day today. Hopefully we'll get a chance to catch up with you soon, and we'll always hopefully be able to keep rooting you on no matter what you do. And obviously you're a night legend for a reason, so we appreciate you taking the time.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys. I'll continue to listen. You do a great job. It's really good to hear, the stories from a lot of the guys, and you do a great job covering UCF, and we appreciate you. So thank you for having me, and have a great day.
Go Knights.
Thanks a lot, Sha'reff.
I'm Jeff Allen. Join me each week for unique yet common sense opinions on sports on the Jeff Allen Sports Talk Podcast. We will break down the sports world minus the hot takes with prominent guests and my stable of sports guys. It's sports conversation the way it should be. Search Jeff Allen Sports Talk wherever you get your podcasts, or go to jeffallensportstalk.com.
There are cows among us. Adam and Mike will tell you who.
All right, back by popular demand, and really by popular demand, I mean Mike and I like to do this part. It is Cow of the Week. If you're new to that particular phenomenon, obviously our rivals to the west are the cows. Cows are not intelligent animals. Cows are not intelligent places to go to school. And so in this particular segment, Mike, we talk about someone that took place that we think is Cow of the Week worthy, something that made us laugh, made us shake our head, a whole bunch of different things. That's how it works around here. Now that you got the game all figured out, Mikey's is always the man who leads us off with his first pick. So the Cow of the Week for you, Mike, is whom?
Well, I saw today people are getting very excited on the internet about free donuts. Krispy Kreme has decided to give out a free donut every day if you have the COVID-19 vaccine. And while it sounds like a good thing in theory, you're getting a free donut. People that are that excited about it, they're going to go every day. I mean, if you're not going to die from COVID, you're going to die from diabetes, obesity. I mean, this is not a good thing for you. Let's face it. You're going to go there, you're going to get one free one. You're probably going to buy 4 more or 5, whatever. You're going to make it into a dozen. It sounds like one of those things that sounds like a great idea at first, but when you really think about it, probably the worst thing that can happen to you. Now going into this place every single day and getting the donut. And I love Krispy Kreme. Remember when we were sitting in class one time, we had class with some football players, and I forgot who it was. They were talking about the Krispy Kreme donuts, and one guy broke into dance just thinking about it. Do you remember who that guy was?
I think I do, yeah.
Was it Travis Fisher? I might have been Travis Fisher.
I always think it was I always associate that with Willie D.
Will Davis. I don't know if it was Willie Davis, because I think those guys used to always talk about Willie D. I don't know if Willie D was.
That's fair. I actually don't know if he was in that class, but you're right, yeah.
But, yeah, Krispy Kreme, I mean, it's a genius idea by them. Sucking in all the fat guys to go in there and scarf down a free donut. And they're going to be buying more donuts while they're in there. But slow down, people. If you're too excited about this, you actually may turn into a cow. Not just of the week, but cow. Your whole body will turn into a cow-like substance if you have one of these every single day. So good luck.
That's like a dark turn. Yeah, I mean, health and fitness advice from your good friend UCF Mike. Obviously, if you're training for the Sons of UCF team on the virtual 5K, Mike very much wants you to stay away from Krispy Kreme. Do I have that right?
Yeah, especially if you're on the Sons of UCF team and you're going to be competing with us. Get off the hammocks and stop walking like Trace.
Oh boy, here we go again. Every time you do this, and somehow I get blamed for it when we get to the live show. And every time it's you, and I swear, and then you say it's me, and I don't ever remember if I actually said it or not. But this time I'm absolutely remembering it was Mike who said that. Mike.
Yeah.
Mike.
I wasn't going to mention the race at all, and you just brought it up, and it triggered something in there.
Okay.
I don't think I mentioned it at all last week, but yeah, I've been training hard, man. I'm ready to put this team on my back. And if you're on the Suns team, stay away from the Krispy Kreme. So if you got vaccinated, that's great. You know, you're doing your part for society, but I don't think you need to hurt your own self by going down and straight from the vaccination going and pick up a couple donuts.
Maybe after you run the race, as a reward, get yourself a donut, right? Have a treat, a post game treat for all your hard work. You know, maybe go grab yourself a donut. Maybe that works out.
That's fine. Hey, look, you want a free donut? Go get one. I'm not saying you shouldn't go get one. Don't go get one every day because they're giving one away every single day if you want it. That's where you get in trouble. Go get a donut here and there once a month or whatever. Treat yourself. Don't go overboard with it, which I see some people are getting very excited about. And I think I'm fearing that they may actually do that.
I'll get health and fitness advice from UCF Mike, always gold. I'm going to go cow of the week for the NCAA. You could probably pick this one every week if you really, 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 really wanted to. But this week, Mike, the NCAA tournaments broke off. The men's tournament started on Friday. The women's tournament started on Sunday. And the teams had to travel into the respective bubble cities, if you will, to get tested and quarantined so they could play. And so the men's team arrived a couple of days, and then the women's team arrived. And all of a sudden, social media pictures started making the rounds of the weight rooms, the respective weight facilities that had been constructed for the players. Both of them looked like they were in hotel room, ballroom situations, which makes some sense. That's probably where they're staying. And the men's team had racks and they had dumbbells, they had plates, they had ellipticals, they had treadmills, they had some, I think I saw some medicine balls, maybe some kettlebells. They had a really nice setup. Like, it was all socially distanced. There was benches, all kinds of good stuff. Looked like a really formidable, a really good weight room to be built on the fly like that, right? Well, then the women get to their facility, and social media start making the rounds. Mike, they had one rack of dumbbells, and I think it only went up to 15 pounds if I was looking at those dumbbells correctly. But they literally had one rack of dumbbells, and that was it. And so obviously that made the rounds of social media. And luckily some organizations, some companies were stepping up. I saw Dick's Sporting Goods. I saw the Equinox Gym. I saw a bunch of places where kind of volunteering or kind of putting some stuff together to send out to San Antonio for the women's teams to be able to have some fitness equipment. And then story is happy ending, that fitness equipment arrives, and it turns out they ended up with a pretty nice setup. They had a lot of different equipment that was available for their use, Mike. But why does it take social media for that to take place? That they can't do better than a rack of dumbbells. I mean, that's just, I don't know what the heck the NCAA was thinking. They're probably not thinking very much at all. But that was just silly, dumb, stupid. And everybody involved in that decision should absolutely be called to the carpet as cow of the week.
Calling it a rack of dumbbells, I think, is being generous. Is
that generous? Okay, I don't know how to describe it then, I guess. Yeah.
There were like 6 dumbbells. And we're talking about how many women there, how many teams? 64 teams, 12 to 15 girls per team.
Yep.
Do the math. That's like one dumbbell for every, I don't know, 300 people or something ridiculous like that. What are they thinking? Well, obviously they're not thinking. Or how training plays such a big part in these kids and these athletes. Every day they train and they utilize things like this, and to not have it available to them, where I gotta think these tournaments are saving money on travel and all that stuff. Teams are there and they're staying there. It can't hurt to have a nice setup, and now it's probably gifted to them by some of these places like Dick's. And the NCAA can do better, man, and the kids deserve better. So.
Yeah, it was just,
hopefully they learned a lesson.
It was just silly dumb, like how that got overlooked. Obviously, it was planned for on the men's side. They had a bunch of equipment that was already there. How that gets overlooked, it just is beyond me. Especially in the biggest tournament of the year, right? It isn't like it was like a little 3-team tournament someplace, and it was a 64-team tournament. The women's teams went through the exact same COVID protocols and all the other stuff as the men's teams. They had to play under the exact same conditions all season long. and to somehow somebody was like, oh, did we get him any equipment? Nah, we're good. That just I don't understand how that operates. And yeah, it was just I'm glad it got rectified, but it certainly is one of those things that makes you scratch your head, and probably the NCAA could be cow of the week any week, really, if you think about it.
And they claimed that it was because of lack of space, and then the girl that filmed the video showed how much space there was. It was in a giant ballroom with nothing in it.
Yes,
and it could have fit 10 LA Fitnesses in that space, and yet there was about 6 dumbbells. So,
what's your favorite piece of gym equipment?
Oh, I haven't been to the actual gym in a year now.
Yeah, me either.
So my wife won't let me go. That my gym is really cool too, because we got all kinds of really cool stuff. They even added in monkey bars that they go higher and across as you go. I like those. We even had the rope. I used to climb the rope. I do all kinds of stuff. That giant tire flipping around. I like that. Yeah. My favorite. I mean, I don't know. I kind of like the sledgehammer hitting the tire and flipping the tire. That's fun. And I got into too last year before COVID started was hitting the heavy bag.
Heavy bag, yeah.
Putting the gloves on and hitting the heavy bag. That was always a good workout too.
When I used to work out outside at my last fitness place in South Florida, we had like a sled you would push. So you put a 245 pound plates on the thing, 2 big handles, and you had to push the thing across the field. And you had high handles and low handles. That was a quad burner, but I always enjoyed that one. That was always fun.
Yeah. Oh, what was cool piece of equipment too my gym has? It's something called the Frogger. Have you ever heard one of these things?
Describe it, maybe.
It's like 2 axles with wheels, right? And you got one bar where you put your hands, and you got some feet things that you put in, and you kind of how do you describe it? You just push yourself across the floor that way, or drag yourself. It's pretty cool. Google it, the Frogger. It's interesting. It's a total body exercise.
It's kind of like a steroided version of like an ab wheel. You know what I mean? but you are the ab wheel. You are the actual wheel in that particular machine. That's a good one. I don't see a lot of gyms have that. That's a good one. My current place uses these sliders. The floor there is carpeted, so you put these sliders on your feet, and you have to kind of get in like a bear crawl situation and slide across these sliders. It's another quad burner. Not a big fan of those.
Yeah, man. Now that we're talking about it, I realize how much I miss my gym, because all I have now is my Peloton, and I got some free weights here. I do some other things with, but that gym is pretty good. It's right next to my house. I pass it every day, and I haven't been in there in a year.
Is it available to be open, or is that a roll down there still?
No, it's open. It's open. My wife doesn't feel comfortable about me going back in there, so I've stayed away.
Well, that's the smart thing to do, Mike. Obviously, you're coming up on a 10-year anniversary. You don't get to that point without doing smart things when your wife tells you not to do dumb things. That's how that situation works. But another fantastic episode. Appreciate everyone who's taken the time to listen to it. Hopefully, you enjoyed that interview with Sha'reff Rashad. Hopefully, you enjoy the stroll down memory lane that was the best plays in UCF history bracket, again, courtesy of UCF Mike. Spring stuff is still continuing on with the football team. We still have some baseball stuff happening, some other sports. We will continue to stay all over that for you up until spring game. And don't forget Thursday night, Sons of UCF Live with Mike, myself, and Mr. Trace Trelko. We have all kinds of different guests, and we have interview clips and all kinds of good stuff. So check us out live Thursday wherever you get your social media stuff on the internet, YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Again, big thanks to everyone out there listening, following, supporting, rating. You guys are the best. We couldn't do it without you. And we'll be back, and maybe better than ever next week, Mike. So until then, everybody have a fantastic week, and go Knights.
Charge on.